disappear forever. He estimated that he would be back in 2 years, quote, provided we can persuade the good woman to cross the seas. The good woman, his wife Deborah, refused to make the perilous crossing. Not otherwise devoid of courage, she was terrified of the sea. The written evidence suggests she was a sturdy, stubborn, practical, and hard-working tradesman's wife, loyal to her husband, devoted to her family, but barely literate and unintellectual. In her mid-50s in 1764, when her husband was urging her to cross the ocean with him, she may have surmised that, were she to leave, she would never return, and refused to give up Philadelphia, her only home, for alien London, where she would cut an awkward figure. Perhaps realizing that if he made a second crossing she might lose him, she persuaded him to begin construction of a new house, either as an inducement or as a symbol of his promised return. As it turned out, they would never live in it together. Once again in London, the doctor resumed his old existence with his surrogate family on Craven Street, with important additions. Before marrying and taking on the New Jersey governorship, William Franklin, himself illegitimate, fathered a natural son whom the grandfather now took into his household. With a wifely equanimity, Mrs. Stevenson accepted not only young Temple, or Billy Franklin, but mentored the doctor's Northamptonshire niece, Sally, as well as various transient Franklin relations. The doctor was the virtual head of Mrs. Stevenson's household. He oversaw her business affairs. She managed all his domestic requirements. The two were frequently invited out together, as if they were married, and their relationship was informed by a domestic and teasing affection. I have no doubt, writes Claude Lopez, co-author of The Private Franklin, that she was in love with B.F. and very anxious to marry him once Debbie died. Poor lady. No chance. When, as minister plenipotentiary to France, he talked about bringing her to Paris, it was to serve once again as his domestic manager, or, as he called her, his econome. His scientific and social agendas overlapped, and were as full as his official one. He found nothing more agreeable than the, quote, general respect paid me by the learned, a number of friends and acquaintance among them with whom I have a pleasing intercourse, a character of so much weight that it has protected me when some in power would have done me injury. My company so much desired that I seldom dine at home in winter, and could spend the whole summer in the country houses of inviting friends if I choose it. It was at one such country house that he began his famous autobiography. Other work having curtailed his scientific investigations, he still managed a new edition of his Experiments and Observations, encouraged and financed Joseph Priestley's book on electricity, and assisted with a French translation of his scientific writings. He and his friends shared one common interest, politics. Politics brought him to England, prolonged his stay, and embroiled him in controversy. When the Stamp Act passed, for instance, his constituents thought he had done too little in protest and might even have conspired with the government. Deborah had to defend the new house from rioters with a musket. Once he realized the vehemence of colonial opposition, Franklin worked with the other American agents to mobilize London and Bristol tradesmen and lobbied vigorously for repeal. Many MPs, now seeing the Stamp Act as a mistake, began casting about for a face-saving device to facilitate repeal. The wide publication of the doctor's masterly 4-hour testimony in the Commons following repeal temporarily rehabilitated his reputation at home and established him as America's unofficial ambassador to Whitehall and Westminster. To British hardliners, he was far too visible, too imposing, and too effective. His was the most able and prolific pen for the American cause in England. He eventually came to serve 4 colonies simultaneously, becoming the virtual American ambassador to Whitehall and Westminster. This prominence, which he relished, only fed the conspiracy theories that proliferated in the halls of power. Many believed Franklin to be head of all the rebels and chief conspirator. As tensions grew between Great Britain and her colonies, Franklin's detractors grew more and more convinced that he had to be neutralized, silenced, discredited, especially after the House of Representatives of Massachusetts Bay, the most radical of the colonies, elected him its representative. Upon this appointment, a few months after the Boston Massacre, his troubles began in earnest. It is here that Craven Street begins.
In the troubles that grew between Great Britain and America after the French and Indian War, no colony was more troublesome than the province of the Massachusetts Bay, nor any city more defiant than Boston. The evening of the 5th of March, 1770, King Street, Boston.
It is a matter of too great notoriety to need any proofs that the presence of His Majesty's troops in Boston is extremely obnoxious to its inhabitants.
30 or 40 persons, mostly lads, being gathered in King Street, began taunting a soldier standing watch before the customs house.
About 100 people went towards the customs house, where the king's money is lodged. They immediately surrounded the sentinel posted there, and with clubs and other weapons threatened to execute their vengeance on him.
Captain Preston, with a party of men with charged bayonets, came from the main guard and, taking their stations by the custom house, began to push and drive the people off.
I immediately sent a non-commissioned officer and 12 men to protect both the sentinel and the king's money, and very soon followed myself.
On which the people grew clamorous, and, it is said, threw snowballs.
Come on, you rascals! At this time, I was between the soldiers and the mob, parleying with and endeavoring all in my power to persuade them to retire peaceably. But to no purpose.
On this, the captain commanded his men to fire.
One of the soldiers, having received a severe blow with a stick, stepped a little on one side and...
A townsman with a cudgel struck him over the hands and, rushing forward, aimed a blow at the captain's head, which grazed his hat and fell pretty heavy upon his arm.
On this, a general attack was made on the men by a great number of heavy clubs and snowballs being thrown at them, by which all our lives were in immediate danger. The mob then ran away, except 3 unhappy men who
were laid dead on the spot, and some who lay struggling for life.
The American Dialogues Foundation presents George Grizzard and Elizabeth Montgomery in Craven Street, the story of Benjamin Franklin in London and the origin of the American Revolution, a 5-part dramatization in sound by Yuri Rasovsky, featuring Tony Jay, David Warner, and Ephraim Zimbalist Jr. Part 1, The China Vase.
After the fatal tragedy of the 5th of March last, the regiments under the command of Lieutenant Colonel Dalrymple were removed from the town of Boston to the barracks of Castle Island. Enclosed are the proceedings of His
Craven
Majesty's
Street, London.
Council,
You are
which we
alone,
apprehend has
sitting at a writing
tendency to
desk in
make
your
a
second-floor
very undue
rooms.
impression on the
You have
minds
thrown
of His
open the
Majesty's
windows to admit the
ministers,
brisk morning air.
respecting the temple
You work
of
at your
the
desk
people
wearing nothing
previous
but...
to the tragical transition
Well,
on the 5th of
wearing
March last.
nothing at all.
You know, the cold bath has long been in vogue as a tonic, but the shock of cold water has always appeared to me as too violent. I've found it much more agreeable to bathe in cold air. This practice is not in the least painful, but on the contrary, very agreeable.
You were just now reading a letter from Boston.
Ah, yes. Your acquaintance with this province and your own well-known warm attachment to it. I was born in Boston.
I know.
Your own, etc., will lead you to exert all your powers in its defense.
This letter constitutes your official instructions.
Your abilities we greatly confide in.
You have just been named agent for the Massachusetts House of Representatives.
In the name and by order of the House, I am with respect your most humble, etc., etc.
Originally, you came to London to represent Pennsylvania, lobbying Parliament, walking papers through the convoluted bureaucracy.
But the assiduity of our friend is really astonishing.
Even your Tory friend, William Strain, admires your work as colonial agent.
He is forever with one member of Parliament or other.